I work reception at a boutique hotel in Amsterdam, and last Tuesday this American guest asked me how his presentation went at our business center. I watched the whole thing through the glass wall while sorting mail. It was a disaster. His slides froze twice, he lost his train of thought, and half the attendees left early to take calls. He stood there grinning like he'd just solved world peace, waiting for me to tell him he crushed it. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "It was not very good." His smile collapsed like a bridge with no supports. He stammered something about technical difficulties, and I said, the technical problems were the smallest issue. He spent the next 5 minutes trying to get me to tell him one thing that went well. I told him the room temperature was comfortable. He hasn't made eye contact with me since. My cousin married a German guy, and at their wedding reception in Hamburg, my American aunt complimented the bride's mother on her dress. The mother, without pausing, replied, "I do not like it either, but my daughter insisted." My aunt's face went through every stage of grief in 3 seconds. She spent the rest of the evening convinced she'd mortally offended this woman, while the German mother was having the time of her life, completely unbothered. I asked my cousin about it later. She said her mother-in-law thought my aunt was being wonderfully honest and was simply returning the favor. "She felt like you two were bonding," my cousin explained. My aunt still brings it up at Thanksgiving as evidence that Germans are trying to destroy American morale. My sister works for a Danish company's New York office, and during her annual review, her manager said, "Your work is adequate." She left that meeting convinced she was about to be fired. She updated her resume, reached out to recruiters, started interviewing at other firms. 2 weeks later, HR called her in to discuss her promotion. Turns out, adequate in Danish corporate culture means perfectly acceptable and meeting all standards. Her manager genuinely thought he'd given her a compliment. When she told him she'd been stressed, he seemed baffled. "But I said adequate, not insufficient," he explained, like that cleared everything up. She's been at the company 4 years now and still flinches every time he uses Scandinavian understatement in her performance reviews. Last quarter he told her something was not completely terrible, and she spent a weekend convinced her project had failed. It had actually exceeded targets by 30%. Here's the truth about European bluntness. They genuinely think they're being respectful by telling you exactly what they think. We think we're being respectful by not crushing your soul with unfiltered honesty. Neither side is wrong, we're just playing completely different games with the same rulebook, and nobody told us the rules changed. I'm a tour guide in Copenhagen, and last month an American couple asked me where they could find a nice, authentic Danish restaurant. I took them to one of the best spots in Nørrebro. They spent 20 minutes studying the menu, then flagged down the server and asked what he recommended. He glanced at their table, looked back at them, and said, "The fish is good if you are hungry. Not, our signature dish is amazing, or, you absolutely have to try. Just the fish is good if you are hungry." The husband laughed like it was a joke and pressed him, "But what's your favorite?" The server paused, genuinely thinking about it, then said, "I do not think about the food after my shift ends." The wife looked at me like I'd led them into a hostage situation. Later she told me the server was incredibly rude and acted like we were bothering him. I explained that he'd given them a straightforward answer and hadn't wasted their time with fake enthusiasm. She said that's exactly what customer service is supposed to be, fake enthusiasm. I told her Danes don't believe in performing emotions they don't feel. She left me a 3-star review on TripAdvisor calling Copenhagen efficient but cold. The server got promoted to manager last week. I manage a youth hostel in Berlin, and this American backpacker asked me if the walking tour was worth it. I'd taken that exact tour the month before. The guide spent 2 hours reading Wikipedia articles verbatim while walking us past buildings without stopping. It was genuinely terrible. I told the American I would not recommend it. He asked what was wrong with it, and I explained. The guide was unprepared, the route was poorly planned, and for €15 he could buy a guidebook and learn more. The American nodded slowly, then asked, "But was there anything good about it?" I thought about it and said, "It ended on time." He laughed like I'd made a joke, signed up for the tour anyway, and came back 3 hours later looking like he'd discovered the truth about Santa Claus. "You were right," he said, stunned. "It was awful." The guide literally read from his phone. I told him I'd said exactly that. He shook his head. "I thought you were just being, European negative. I figured you meant it was fine but not amazing." I asked him why he thought I would lie to him. He didn't have an answer for that. He spent his last night in Berlin Googling German communication style on our lobby Wi-Fi. His search history included, "Do Germans actually hate me or just seem like it?" My sister works at a university in Oslo, and an American professor joined their department last fall. His first week, he gave a lecture to 200 students, and afterward, he asked one of the Norwegian professors how it went. She told him, "The structure was unclear, and you spoke too quickly for students with English as a second language." He stood there frozen, waiting for the compliment he assumed would follow. It never came. She just kept explaining what hadn't worked. The PowerPoint slides were too text-heavy, he'd skipped over 2 key concepts without explanation, and his jokes didn't translate. When she finished, she smiled and said, "I hope that helps for next time." He went to the department head to report that this professor had publicly humiliated him. The head was confused because she'd done it in private, in his office, and had offered to mentor him through improving his teaching. The American insisted she was trying to sabotage his career. My sister had to sit in on a mediation session where the Norwegian professor kept saying, "But I gave him only honest feedback to help him improve," and the American kept saying, "But you didn't tell me anything I did well." They're in the same department. Neither has budged. The American now records all his lectures and sends them to friends in the States for actual constructive feedback. The Norwegian still doesn't understand what went wrong. I'm a waiter at a cafe in Stockholm, and this American family came in for lunch last Saturday. The father ordered for everyone, then leaned back and said, "This place looks amazing. I bet the food here is just incredible." I looked at him and said, "It is fine." He laughed and said, "Come on, don't be modest. What's the best thing on the menu?" I told him, "I think everything is acceptable." His smile started to crack. "Acceptable? What about the meatballs? Those must be amazing, right? We came here specifically for authentic Swedish meatballs." I explained that the meatballs met standard expectations and were consistent with what you'd find elsewhere. He looked at his wife like I'd personally ruined their vacation. "Maybe we should go somewhere else," she whispered. I told them they could, but most places would serve similar quality. They stayed. The father left me a 7% tip and wrote, "Disappointing service" on the receipt. The meatballs were fine. I was not lying. My uncle moved to Vienna for work, and he invited his Austrian colleagues to dinner at his apartment. He'd spent all day making lasagna, completely from scratch, and when they arrived, he stood there waiting for the compliments to pour in. His coworker took one bite and said, "You have used too much cheese." Not, "This is delicious," or, "Thank you for cooking." Just, "You have used too much cheese." Another colleague added, "The pasta is slightly overcooked." My uncle's face did something I'd never seen before, a combination of rage and existential crisis. He'd been in Austria for 6 months and thought he'd finally made friends. That night, he called my aunt in tears, convinced his colleagues hated him and he should quit his job. She tried to explain that they were probably being helpful, giving him notes so he could improve next time. He said, "There is no next time." Plot twist. Those same colleagues invited him to a wine festival the next weekend and bought him drinks all night. When he asked why they criticized his cooking if they actually liked him, they seemed genuinely confused. "We did not criticize you," they said. "We criticized your lasagna. Those are different things." He still brings this up at family gatherings as the night his soul died. The colleagues still don't understand what they did wrong. I work at a bakery in Helsinki, and last week an American tourist asked me which pastry was my personal favorite. I told her, "I do not have a favorite." She laughed and said, "Oh come on, you must have a favorite. You work here." I explained that I didn't feel strongly about any of them. She pressed harder, "But if you had to choose?" I told her I genuinely did not have a preference, they were all acceptable pastries. She stared at me for a long moment, then said, "So you're saying none of them are good?" I clarified, I was saying they were all roughly equivalent in quality. She asked if I even liked working there. I told her the job was fine. She left without buying anything. My manager asked what happened, and I explained the interaction exactly as it occurred. He shrugged and said, "Americans require more emotion." I asked if I should pretend to care about pastries. He thought about it and said, "Probably not worth the effort." The American left a review online saying our staff openly admitted the food was mediocre. The bakery has a 6-month wait list for their cinnamon rolls. We're doing fine. My brother's girlfriend is Swiss, and last Christmas, he took her to meet our family in Phoenix. My mom had made her famous apple pie, and she served it with this huge smile, waiting for everyone to rave about it. The girlfriend took a bite and said, "This is too sweet for me." The entire table went silent. My mom's smile froze. My dad put down his fork. My sister grabbed her wine. The girlfriend continued, completely unaware. "I think the sugar ratio is very high. In Switzerland, we use less sugar and more cinnamon." My mom excused herself to the kitchen. My brother followed her. We could hear crying. The girlfriend looked at me and asked, "Did I say something wrong?" I explained that in America, when someone makes you food, you say it's delicious even if it tastes like cardboard. She seemed baffled. "But it is too sweet." "Why would I lie?" I told her because it makes people happy. She asked, "But then how does your mother improve her baking if nobody tells her the truth?" I had no answer for that. My mom forgave her eventually, but she brings it up every Christmas. "Remember when Heidi destroyed my pie?" The girlfriend still maintains she was being helpful. She's not wrong, but she's also not invited to Thanksgiving anymore. My mom now makes 2 versions of every dessert, one normal and one European style, with 40% less sugar. Heidi's version is objectively better, but we'll never tell my mom that. I sell train tickets in Zurich, and this American couple came to my window last month asking about the scenic route to Lucerne. I told them the 11:15 train had the best views but would arrive 20 minutes later than the direct route. The husband asked, "But it's worth it, right? The views are incredible." I explained that the views were acceptable and typical of Swiss countryside. He pressed further. "Come on, they must be spectacular. I've seen photos." I told him the photos were likely enhanced and that his expectations might be unrealistic. His wife's face fell. "So you're saying we shouldn't take the scenic route?" I clarified. I was saying the views matched what one would expect from alpine landscape, nothing more or less. He asked if I was trying to talk them out of it. I explained I was providing accurate information so they could make an informed choice. They took the direct train and later complained to my supervisor that I'd ruined their excitement. My supervisor, who is also Swiss, asked me what I'd said. I repeated the conversation word for word. He nodded and said, "That sounds correct." The couple left a negative review online saying Swiss train employees tried to talk us out of seeing the scenery. We receive this complaint roughly twice per month. The scenic train stays fully booked. The views are fine. My cousin drives a taxi in Amsterdam, and he picked up this American tourist who wanted to see Anne Frank's house. The guy kept saying how emotional it was going to be, how powerful, how it would change his life. My cousin, who drives past it 40 times per week, said, "It is a house where a girl wrote a diary." The American went quiet for a block, then said, "Dude, way to kill the vibe." My cousin didn't understand. "I am simply stating what it is." The American explained that he'd been building up to this moment for months, reading books, watching documentaries, and now my cousin had reduced it to nothing. My cousin replied, "I did not reduce anything. It is historically important, but it remains a house." The American asked to be let out 2 blocks early. He walked the rest of the way, presumably to reclaim his emotional journey. My cousin told me this story like it was the American who'd been strange. "Why does he need me to perform feelings about Anne Frank?" he asked. I told him Americans expect emotional validation for their experiences. He said that sounded exhausting. The American left a 1-star review saying my cousin was disrespectful to Holocaust history. My cousin's rating is still 4.8 stars. He's been driving taxis for 11 years and has never once pretended to care about tourist landmark. He sleeps fine at night. I teach English in Prague, and last semester an American exchange student asked me if her pronunciation was improving. I told her it was progressing at the expected rate. She asked what that meant. I explained that after 3 months of study, her current level was standard. She pushed further. "But am I doing well?" I said she was performing adequately for her cohort. She asked if I thought she had talent. I told her talent was less relevant than consistent practice. She left my office crying. Her roommate, a Czech student, asked me what happened. I recounted the conversation. The roommate said, "But you told her the truth." I confirmed I had. The American filed a complaint with the department saying I'd destroyed her confidence. The department head, who is also Czech, read the complaint and asked me if I'd said she was failing. I said I had not. He asked if I'd said she was succeeding. I said I had not. He marked the complaint as resolved. The American transferred to a different English instructor who tells students they're making amazing progress, regardless of performance. Her pronunciation has not improved, but she seems much happier. The Czech students still come to me because they appreciate accurate assessment. Both teaching styles exist in the same department. Nobody has resolved which one is actually better. My brother-in-law is German, and when he moved to Seattle, his co-workers kept asking him how he was liking America. He'd say, "It is fine." They'd look concerned and ask if something was wrong. He'd explain that nothing was wrong, fine meant satisfactory. They'd press him, "Just fine? Not great? Not amazing?" He'd repeat, "Fine." This happened probably 50 times before his manager pulled him aside to ask if he was unhappy in his position. My brother-in-law was genuinely confused. He said his work was progressing adequately, his colleagues were competent, and the projects were acceptable. His manager looked relieved and said, "Oh good, I thought you hated it here." My brother-in-law asked why anyone would think that. The manager explained that fine in American means barely tolerable. My brother-in-law asked what word he should use for satisfactory performance. The manager suggested great or awesome. My brother-in-law said, "But those words indicate exceptional quality, which would be inaccurate." They stared at each other for a moment. The manager said, "Just try it." My brother-in-law now tells people things are great when they meet German standards of acceptable. His co-workers think he's finally adjusted to American culture. He feels like he's lying in every conversation. He's been here 8 years. The cognitive dissonance never fades. I run a language school in Brussels, and we hosted a cross-cultural communication workshop last month. The European instructors kept explaining that directness was a sign of respect. It meant they valued the other person's time and intelligence enough to be honest. The American instructors kept explaining that positivity was a sign of respect. It meant they valued the other person's feelings and confidence enough to encourage them. After 2 hours, both groups understood the other's perspective completely. Then they went back to their own communication styles anyway, because understanding isn't the same as changing. One American instructor told me privately, "I get it now. They're not trying to be mean. They just don't have the gene for emotional cushioning." A Dutch instructor told me, "I understand their approach, but it seems inefficient to say 12 words when 3 would work." Neither was wrong. Both were baffled. The real issue isn't that Europeans are too blunt or Americans are too fake. It's that we've built entire communication systems around opposite priorities, and when they collide, both sides walk away thinking the other one is broken. Europeans leave interactions with Americans thinking, "Why did they waste 5 minutes not saying what they meant?" Americans leave interactions with Europeans thinking, "Why did they have to destroy my soul when they could have just been nice?" And we're all standing there, in airports and cafes and office buildings, wondering why cross-cultural communication feels like defusing a bomb where both people are reading different instruction manuals. The instructions are both correct. The bomb still explodes. Welcome to international relations.